Please step forward onto the X for processing.
Why won't anybody tell me what I'm doing
Scanning
here? What
biometrics.
is it? What's going on? I was sleeping when I was dragged out here.
Unusually high levels of Daily Solutions podcast detected.
Daily Solutions podcast. What does that even
Ejecting
mean?
sample.
All right.
Welcome, everyone.
This is Ashkahn here.
And this is Ashkahn as well.
And today's question is, why do you call yourselves Ashkahn? At what point should I open a second float tank center?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, so we only have one float center. I feel like we should...
Yeah, so maybe after 10 years is the right length of time here.
So, take our advice with that in mind. We don't have a second float center, but we got lots of thoughts.
Yeah,
that's for sure. Many opinions.
Unfounded, most of them. But
yeah, but we'll tell them to you.
So I would say... personally, I think you shouldn't open a center before a couple years. But I would say 1 year maybe minimum, and even that makes me really nervous.
So why? What's the benefit of waiting?
I don't know. I just chose a random number and ran with it, man,
Mine was going to be 1.28 years.
No, so the reason is because it's such a sensitive, delicate thing opening a float tank center and running one, and there's so much that can go wrong. And some of the stuff that can go wrong happens to really expensive materials and doesn't happen until a year or 2 years have passed. I would say by about after 3 to 3.5 years, we kind of realized a lot of the materials that we could destroy in a float tank center, So it runs this risk of if you open up another center after 8 months, you just open, you're crushing it, you have enough money or a loan or something to go forward with a new location you decide to. And then a year in, so 4 months after you've kind of started construction on a second location and gotten it going, you realize your floors are falling apart in your first location. You just invested a ton of money to put the exact same floors in your second location, right? And the same goes for soundproofing. The same goes for kind of all of these things that might start failing after a short amount of time. So that's why I say at least 2 years, because 2 years is enough time you get to see what you did wrong in the first center, and you get to save a lot of money by fixing those mistakes in the second.
Yeah, construction is definitely a big part of it. And then just kind of understanding how the flow of your appointments and stuff works too. If you do it too early, you might not realize that summer makes a big difference in terms of your schedule, or maybe your schedule is not as heavy as it was when you first started because you were brand new and exciting and there was no float centers around you and you were kind of a pressure relief for people who wanted to try floating, and that's not the case anymore 2 years in. There's, some stability in terms of your marketing and getting to the point where you can actually reliably keep your tanks to a certain capacity. That takes a little bit of time to figure out as well.
Yeah, and it might be, if you're the first center in your area and you're thinking about expanding to a second because you're killing it and your area definitely has the market demand to support a second center, maybe by the time you finish construction, you won't be the first center there anymore. We've seen this happen in other cities where as the second center of someone's being built, of the only float center in town, 2 or even 3 other float tank centers have kind of sprung up just between when they're starting construction and when they finish. So, that too can really affect the planning process.
Yeah, and all the benefits of doing this earlier, the ones that I think most people think about going into it, right? Obviously, you can get another part of town there are no float centers in, and
yeah, kind of market domination early.
Yeah, but the part that you don't think about is the stuff that doing it too early might end up with some mistakes that you've now duplicated or replicated from place to place that you would be able to avoid had you waited a little time to kind of suss that stuff out.
Initially, even though we don't have any second locations, we've thought about it a lot over the years. We almost opened another location in our second year.
Yeah.
And in our third year. And in our fourth year. And I think after that, we kind of realized that maybe we're going to invest our time into other parts of the industry. But, even now, it's only really after about, 7 years in business, which is where we are, that I feel like I'd be totally confident opening another center. And I feel like we've learned all of the mistakes that we made the first time.
Yeah, and I guess the other side is personnel. When a lot of people are opening this as this is your first business, you're getting into the swing of things. You're putting a lot of your own personal time and work in dealing with this first center and being there when emergencies pop up and covering shifts that don't get covered. And it might be a good idea to have some systems figured out for that sort of stuff so that your center is running a little bit more independently before all of a sudden you have 2 centers that you have to deal with and be there for emergencies and cover shifts that nobody's covering, and you're kind of a little bit more in a pickle there.
Yeah, and if your plan is to start with multiple centers, just sort of immediately start up and have 3 centers in an area. Maybe
It's a little, yeah.
maybe do one and see how that goes, and then expand. That's even more risky because you don't know what the demand is. You don't know how packed your tanks are going to be in your first center. So starting with multiple centers, I say you should not open your second one until after 2 years. So obviously starting immediately with multiple is against my own beliefs.
So,
and that's
some stuff to weigh in the side that I think is probably less intuitive for people. I think it's a little bit more tempting to just want to open a bunch of places at once. So there's some things to consider in terms of waiting longer.
Yep, and I think it's really standard business practice, too, for people who have this expansion in mind to think on the 1-year timeline. And I guess I'd urge you for a float tank center just because it's so unique and so delicate to instead think about maybe 2 years before you take that jump to another center.
And I'd say, like, especially the construction. That's almost like the highlighted thing of this is that, like, you just can't tell that construction is failing until a little bit. Like, sometimes you won't even know until a few years in that you made a wrong decision with something material that you used. So giving things time to fail.
Yep. All right.
Great.
If you have more questions,
you can go to floattanksolutions.com/podcast.
blast them our way. We'll answer them.
Have a good day.